Hi all, before I begin, I just wanted to say if you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe, comment, share with anyone who might be interested. I will continue to put these out in a timely fashion, so with that being said, please enjoy the video. Good morning, evening, twilight, whatever it may be while you're watching this. Today I'm going to talk about a book called On the Beach by Nevil Shute, and he was born in the United Kingdom and lived most of his life there, to be honest. He was a World War II, served in the Navy in World War II, was in the aeronautical industry, got married, had kids, all before moving to Australia after the Second World War. But this book takes place in Australia. He emigrated to Australia, spent the rest of his life there and died there. So I am actually counting this book for Australia because it really gave me a sense of Australia as well. Just even the whole, pretty much the main portion of the book takes place there. So the book, it is one of the most emotionally crushing, just impactful, heavy things I've read. I was just left shell-shocked by the ending, and all I wanted to do was just hug my wife next to me and then go on out and get a dog, hug that dog too. And it's basically, there's World War III happens in the north between Russia, China, and then the U.S. gets involved. This is the 1950s. It was written in 1957. So this war happens, and now we are in Australia with Commander Dwight Towers of the United States Navy and Captain Peter Holmes, I think it is. Can't remember, but yeah, he's Australian and he's part of the Royal Australian Navy. So we follow kind of these two men and their families, or well, Peter Holmes' family, and then Dwight's family is back in the United States when this war happened. So he goes on with the full knowledge that they're probably 99.9, if not 100%, gone, and yet throughout the whole book he never really accepts this. He's still thinking about them, he's still acting as if they're alive, and that's just heartrending. And uh, I'm going to separate this into like a non-spoiler and spoiler section. So right now I'm trying to be as non-spoiler as possible. But you know, if you watch my videos, it's just some things are going to be spoiled. If you want to read the book if you're interested at any point, just go read it. So they're in Australia and they're basically waiting for this radioactive cloud from the north to come to Australia and just wipe out the rest of life on Earth. And it's moving south progressively. So they're in contact with like South America, and they're hearing, oh, yep, Rio's knocked out today. So people are moving south to Uruguay and then to Argentina, and it's just this like this moving cloud of death that's destroying everything. And not only is it going to kill human life, but you know, these cobalt bombs are creating a true nuclear winter that's going to essentially destroy all life on Earth. And the implications of that are just, they don't like dawn at you at the beginning of the book, because it lulls you in with these depictions of Australian life in the 1950s. Everyone's acting very civil, to each other, despite what's coming. The government is still functioning. Electricity is still functioning in Australia. There's these carefree dinners, oceanside parties, and then the book just winds up and delivers blow after blow as kind of the pieces start falling, and none of it is, so to speak, due to the behavior of the people. It's just the inevitability of the situation. The quote at the beginning of the book gives you an idea right away what you're in for, from T.S. Eliot. It goes, right there, like the epitaph or whatever you call that. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper. And it's yeah, again, just a really intense novel. And the main kind of action of the book, well, back up. Um, uh, yeah, so we meet Captain Peter Holmes, who's assigned to Commander Towers. So a man from the Australian Navy is assigned to a commander from the United States Navy who was in Australia or in the South at the time that the bombs went off. So the setting is near Melbourne, which is, you know, one of the southernmost, if not the southernmost city in Australia. And the main action is the reconnaissance missions that these Navy officers are sent on. So intelligence missions to see who's alive, how are we doing up in the north of Australia or in Papua New Guinea, which was the first mission they're sent on, which happens pretty early in the book, or like early to mid. They're basically just sent up north around the edge of Australia and then they stop in Papua New Guinea, and yeah, they're basically just checking out the situation, and again, keeps kind of lulling you in where the death isn't immediately certain yet, but it's a little removed, and all you know is they have until like sometime in September, so like a little less than a year from the start of the book is about when they think the radioactive cloud is going to reach them, like more or less, like. It's not exact. It could be a month early, it could be a month later, but people are just going to start getting sick, you know, radiation poisoning, like vomiting and not being able to eat, and then they're gonna and then they might get better for a few days or a week, and then go downhill again, never to get better again. But everyone is going to succumb to this. There's nobody who can survive these levels of radiation. And back then, I did a little research on this, and the little that I could tell is that this sort of scenario isn't as likely in today because the nuclear weapons have been toned down. But back then, these countries were armed with these cobalt bombs that had just truly massive destructive power, and they were armed and ready. And now there might be countries now that have the technology for it, but from what I understand, there has been de-armament of these kind of weapons, and they've been brought down to levels that are a bit more targeted and wouldn't cause this just vast nuclear winter. I mean, obviously they're still horrible. We never want any nuclear weapons to be fired ever, but these sort of like world-ending cobalt bombs are hopefully a little bit more contained today, but countries do have the technology, yet they still do know how to make them. So it's still scary. But at this time, I mean, can you imagine living in the 50s and it's just like that threat is imminent, like the Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff like that? Like, wow. That's part of what makes this book special. So before I go into the spoiler section, I just want to say there is a film of this book too that I haven't seen yet, but I know that the power of this book, and it wasn't made long after the book, the movie, the American actor who stars as Dwight Towers in it, did it without pay, did it for free because he believed in the message of the book. And the United States government at the time was not willing to support the film in any way with its anti-nuclear message, which I think is really interesting, an interesting story behind the film. There are some ways that the film deviates from the book, from what I read, that the author didn't agree with, but I do hear that people enjoy the film, so there's that option too. And now I'm going to go into the spoiler section. So, I guess before the spoiler section, I do just want to point out what I like about the writing is the imagery, as they're going around exploring this dead world. The second reconnaissance mission, actually, is that they're hearing like a Morse code out from near Seattle. Like they're getting a trace of Morse code, and there's some but little hope that this could be somebody who doesn't know how to use it, because the Morse code is like unintelligible, and it's constantly unintelligible except for a few select words. But they're wondering, oh, maybe it's just somebody that doesn't know how to use it, and they're just there. There's a small hope of that, but they think it's unlikely. They think it's maybe just a system that's still running and is going to shut down, but they're not sure. So they send after this reconnaissance mission around Australia. They send out Dwight Towers and Peter Holmes and a crew manning a submarine to go out towards Seattle and see what happens. And this is dangerous because there's not landmines, but sea mines, like mines under the ocean that they have to watch out for. And there's certain areas that they don't have the map, so they have to adjust their route. And they're basically just going to all these towns and peeking their scope out of the water and looking and seeing what's alive and what's not. So that's kind of the central action of the story, is that mission to Seattle, towards Seattle, and that's where and then also what's happening back home with the wife of Peter Holmes and their daughter, and then Moira is another character that comes in and has a sort of character development with Dwight, whose family is, if you remember, in the United States and probably dead, but doesn't know for sure, but it's probably sure. And so now I'm moving on to the spoilers. So if you're interested in reading this book, turn the video off and read the book, and then come back and watch what I have to say about what's going on. So we meet Captain Peter Holmes and his family. They're assigned to Dwight Towers. I've been through that. So I talked about the imagery. Yeah, so yeah, there's one point on the road to Seattle, or the path to Seattle, where they pass a running hydroelectric station, and the way it's described is just kind of this, being lit up at night, and no one's there, and it's just running out. There's times when they come on towns along the coast. They can only see a little bit because they can't get out of the submarine because it's too radioactive. The scope goes up, and it's like you just see everything looks normal. Maybe a broken window here. Maybe they see a dog, because the radioactivity affects dogs less than people. Or not less than people, but it's a delayed reaction. So actually all the people are going to die before all the dogs die, stuff like that you don't think about. And then people who have dogs are like, oh my God, I'm going to have to put my dog down before the radioactivity gets here. Another image, I guess, is just when they get to Seattle, they send one of the crew members out with a radioactivity suit. He's got, like, I forget how long, 2 hours maybe, or a very short period of time that he can just go and check out what's going on with this signal. And all he finds is just all this buildup of maybe there's survivors here, and all he finds is just this needle of a transmitter swaying in the wind, and that's what's sending this random Morse code. And yeah, so he just takes it, sends back to Australia that we're shutting it down now. It was nothing, and they return. On the trip there, one of the crew members actually jumps ship. He gets out of the submarine, closes the hatch, and runs. Or swims toward the shore, because it's his hometown. He actually found his hometown along the journey, and he just desperately wants to see, that there is no hope. And he also, they find him on their return journey fishing. And as he's fishing, they bring up the comm system of the submarine, and they talk to him, and he just responds like, I'd rather go this way. I'd rather be here in my hometown than far away from it. And even though he's seen that everybody indeed is dead, um, he, he's just enjoying his last days until the radiation sickness kicks in. And so he confirms what we all knew. But then there's what about Dwight's family? Now, Dwight continues throughout the whole book to believe in his family as alive, even though he knows they're dead. And it's kind of irrational. But for example, there's Moira, who is a friend of Peter and Mary, who are the Australians. So Moira is also Australian. Her dad is a landowner of some rural land in like a big farm type of thing. And Dwight goes to this farm. He gets to know Moira through them, and they almost many times have a sort of relationship. But because Dwight, still in his mind, has to believe that his family is alive, his daughter, his sons, he's never unfaithful with Moira. And that was one thing, I guess, that the movie changed that the author didn't like, because it was an important part of Dwight's character that he remained emotionally and physically faithful to his wife and family, despite they were probably dead, and that it would have ruined something within him to break that faith before he died. And Moira even helped, even though Moira has every reason to be resentful of this, because she does really like Dwight and had dreams of getting married, though she never got married, or at least her family did. She didn't. She's more of just kind of an alcoholic, free spirit, but she does like Dwight, and she helps him get a pogo stick for his daughter, because that's one thing. He's like looking at all these shops in Melbourne trying to find a pogo stick, but can't find one. And so Moira gets him or helps him get a pogo stick that she has, or gets one fixed up or something like that. And it's just so heartrending. Dwight sleeps with the pogo stick, and he buys some jewelry for his wife. I think he buys a gift for his son too, but I can't remember what it is. But the emotions are so repressed, like for both Peter and for the men in the story, and maybe that's a reflection of the 50s values. The emotions are really repressed, but you do see them. You see that they do have these emotions, but in kind of more indirect ways. So the real the book just gets more and more heartrending as you get towards the end. Peter's family, he's got a baby daughter and his wife, and he's thinking about, while he's back in Melbourne, he talks to a doctor called John Osborne, and this doctor basically assures Peter that no, there's no hope. There's no hope. The scientist and this doctor says, the government's going to start giving out these free poison pills, basically, for people who want to end it all before suffering all the effects of radiation sickness. And Peter goes to his wife and takes a sample and shows this is in an IV. You can get it as an IV too. And he shows his wife, like, this, you have to euthanize basically our baby if neither of us can go on at some point, and if I can't do it. And he shows her the pill, and you got to take this pill. And the wife just starts like getting angry at him because she's still holding on to a bit of hope that maybe they can survive this irrationally, but the radiation's coming, everyone's dying, they know it, and no one's going to be spared. But and so there's this conflict between them, because it's like Peter knows it's happening, but his wife mentally cannot deal with the idea. And that's just truly that's the other punch. And then finally at the end, it's just like Peter and Moira like go on one last trip together and all this stuff. I'm just going all over all this to really get myself back in the mind state of like how just powerful this ending was, and it's really bleak, and I have mixed feelings about the book, because I don't necessarily like like it, the bleak ending, but I don't think that was the point of the book. It was to make you feel, it was to make you really want to stop governments from ever doing something like this, or to get to somebody like man, if anyone ever tells you to launch one of these missiles, like disobey orders, you know. And it's like uh, it's the most effective anti-nuclear um, book I can even imagine, because it just spares nothing. Nothing survives. They create kind of a time capsule for any future civilization that might find it. And but how would that even happen? Life is going to have to evolve again, because all major life is going to be wiped out. Probably the oceans too. You know, they talk about the sea life dying, the birds, and all this stuff, and it's just. Um, I mean, there's not a whole lot deeper to the novel to talk about, as besides the themes of just, you know, what is the meaning of life when there's going to be no life? Because true, we are all in a sense on the beach, in that we're all going to die someday, but um, a lot of what keeps us going and keeps us like helps us deal with death is knowing that we've left behind some legacy for the future. And what happens when that legacy is just gone? Nothing's going. Imagine your death means that nothing is going to exist after. It's like the worst kind of solipsism, but it comes true. And and but you like what even? How do you even still be a civil person? And everybody in this book remains so civil. Dr. John Osborne, I guess the closest to people going wild is Dr. John Osborne, the scientist, has a Ferrari, and he goes and participates in these races. And there's a whole section at the end of the book where he participates in these races and wins races. But a lot of people die in these races because they're just driving recklessly, and they're not trained. They're just taking out their sports cars, and these are rich people, obviously. So, you know, people with some money, and they're just taking these out and recklessly driving. So like there's sort of that way of dealing with the end. And but most people are just going about their day-to-day jobs and living life as normally as they can until the end. And that's really interesting. But yeah, the ending is just that, as you can imagine, everyone dies. People the book ends with Moira taking the pill, as she imagines Dwight actually takes the submarine out onto the water, and knows it's going, and decides to sink it. He's like, this is what you know, command would have wanted me to do, even though he's the last surviving member of the U.S. Navy. So he's actually the head of the U.S. military by the end of the book, because he's the only one. And that actually is officialized at some point. So um, but yeah, Melbourne is the last city, the southernmost city. So yeah, or at least big city, and that's the point where it stops. And the book has obviously just that strong anti-nuclear message, the themes of how can we behave civilly, and would we? It's kind of interesting to think this is such a unique post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic book, because it's not the world going crazy. It's not people going mad because they know the end is coming or the end has come. It's people just kind of accepting it and holding on to the last bits of society until that radiation takes them out. And yeah, I don't have much more to say about the book. It's really hard for me to. I just felt an incredibly personal feeling of wanting to treasure what I have, treasure the life we have uh, in this world, my life. It just made me really want to appreciate life more, and as much as I can, because yeah, death is an inevitability, not only just for that, but also that we as people have the power to really destroy this world. Um, and we always have to be conscious of that, and appreciate life, because this is about the most terrifying, horrible situation I can imagine. This kind of waiting for the inevitable. But yeah, it's not a happy book. It's a depressing book, but And not all of the books I read are going to be like that, obviously, but this one affected me, and I don't recommend it to everybody, especially if some of the themes I talked about could trigger you or make you really feel bad. But if it's something that sounds interesting to you, I definitely recommend it. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, because I'm going to keep doing more of these, and I look forward to the next country, which I'm not going to reveal. Just kind of, I've got a few lined up, but just kind of taking them as I feel like. So, yeah, thanks for watching.